Hi, my name is Leah Day, and welcome to this quick casual cam video. I have been free motion quilting on my Dream Goddess quilt. You've probably seen some other casual cam videos. You've seen she was appliqued in only a few days. It's taken a few more days to design the quilting design, and now I am stitching with water-soluble thread and attaching one layer of batting for trapunto. So in this video I want to just share with you how I'm forming the feathers in her hair, some of the issues that I'm dealing with, and of course some of the things that I can get away with because I'm stitching water-soluble thread. It's going to come out. So as I'm forming these designs, as I'm filling in the shapes, sometimes I can stitch back over myself. If I break thread, it's no big deal. That kind of thing. It's always really nice. It's kind of freeing to stitch in this type of thread. When I actually go to quilt this quilt at the final run after the batting's been clipped away, then I'll have to be a lot more picky and precise, but right now I can do this pretty quickly. So enjoy the video, and of course if you have any questions, post them in the comments below the video. So here I am working on this feather in this space on this quilt. And you'll notice that I have some marks here, but I'm pretty much ignoring them. I set up these marks really more as a placement, as a guideline to know which direction I wanted the feathers to run into. But when I actually started filling, I found that many times the feathers didn't end up running along those lines or were bigger or smaller. In this situation, I changed up even the lines around them. So here I'm doubling this fine line as I stitch down. And then I'll start forming my feathers up from the base just like I did this first set. So here we go. As I stitch this fine line, I'm just aiming to echo. Just maintain a nice distance between the two lines of quilting. And then to start, this is kind of the tricky spot. Kind of sets the stage of the feathers. And I'm also right here on the edge of the quilt, which I don't like to be, just simply because that edge likes to lip up. And I'm just going to go for kind of a nice curve shape. I'm also going to stitch back along the base. It just makes clipping that out a little easier. I'm going to trim off this edge, but I don't want to trim into the feather. I want to make sure it stays attached to the fabric. And this is water-soluble thread that I'm stitching with, so I don't have to worry about thread breaks, or if I make a mistake, you might see me stitch back over myself. And that is simply because it's water-soluble thread. This is going to wash out. This is not going to be in the finished quilt. This is just a placeholder holding this first layer of batting to the back of the quilt. So it's kind of a freebie. I get away with a lot of mistakes when I'm stitching this first step to trapunto. And I don't worry about being perfect. If I form a feather and it's not quite right, sometimes I'll stitch back into it, stitch back over it, and that's just fine. As long as I remember when I'm going to quilt it, as long as I remember which line I want to use, I'm going to be alright. Sometimes I'll go in and actually rip out stitches with a seam ripper if it's really confusing which lines I'm planning on using. Sometimes I'll even have a little cup of water next to me and dissolve the stitches so that way I have more of a blank slate. Really honestly doesn't matter. As for forming these feathers, I always like to stitch feathers as a travel back feather. I'm traveling back along the top line of the feather and then swinging out and around. It's the way I like to form them because the travel stitching is consistent across the back of every feather. I also can form that shape nice and round, and estimate my space and swing out and around. I really struggle to stitch feathers any other way than this, so this is really what I stick with most of the time. I know it's possible to stitch feathers 100 different ways, but this is the way that has always worked best for me. As I work my way up, I'm just shrinking the shape down, bringing them in closer together. And of course bringing my hands a little closer to the needle too, so that way I maintain nice control. Now you see that one's a little oddly shaped in comparison to the other ones. I might go back in and just kind of round out that end. That's what I meant when I said can kind of fix mistakes with water-soluble thread. I can travel stitch back over it. It doesn't matter. This thread's going to come out. This is just a placeholder. This is just a guideline for the quilting that's going to go on top of it, and this is going to hold the batting in place while I clip it away to make these feathers super puffy. So now let me show you how these feathers work as I'm stitching downwards towards myself. Same type of feather, still a travel back feather, it's just a different direction. And as I'm going, I'm expanding and rounding them out in a downward fashion. So I'm coming out, kind of curling it out and around, and I'm making these bigger and longer as I go. I need to make these nice and large. They're taking up lots of space on the quilt. It's going to be really pretty, but having that control to make that nice and curved shape come all the way around. Watch your hands. I'm really putting a lot of pressure on my hands and expanding my fingers outward. And that's how I'm able to make that nice smooth curve. I have a lot of control over the quilt. My gloves on, and also the angle feels pretty comfortable. Sometimes if I don't like the angle that it hit that edge, I might come in, trace back along it. And again, the lines were kind of more or less a guideline, an idea of where the feathers should go. If I needed to, I could go back in and remark everything, but it's pretty time consuming. And this is working out pretty well. If I had a tricky spot that needed to match up just right, then I would definitely mark it. But as I go down, I can just expand these, just let them organically get bigger and longer. And you can see just how big that is. It's, you know, more than an inch wide there, and I think that's going to look great. If I'm worried about these being a little too big, I might go in with a decorative stitch after this is basted into an actual quilt sandwich. I might go in with some decorative thread, but honestly I think I'll probably leave everything, let everything get really big. I like this look. Okay, so I'm going to speed up the video here and then show you some other feathers that I was working on, so that way you can get a good perspective on all the different directions that I sometimes have to stitch in on this quilt. So that's it for feathers. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. Of course, if you'd like to learn more about this quilt, definitely check out my other casual cam videos about the Dream Goddess, and of course, learn more about free motion quilting, trapunto, pretty much any of these topics at leahday.com. Until next time, let's go quilt.